Hey folks, Wayne Polson here. It is T minus 38 days and counting until the big reveal. I can't wait for that day. I want to share it all with you. Come along for the ride, would you? Let's talk about rakers, depth gauges, riders, I don't know, some other terms. Things that are right there in front of the cutter on a chainsaw. Why are there so many names for that thing? It's really confusing. The other day at work, I brought up the term raker with one of my friends, and I asked him if he knew what it did. And he said, yeah, it rakes out the kerf, takes the chips out of the kerf that the cutter leaves behind. Although when I questioned him about the position of it, he said he was surprised that the raker or the depth gauge for that particular cutter is in front of the tooth. So back in the day, I made a video, and I naively, I guess, use the term raker because everybody uses the term raker. It's okay. It's okay to call it a raker as long as everybody knows what you're talking about when you use the word raker. But it can give a false impression to somebody who's a novice. It did for me. I didn't know what the raker did until someone told me it was a depth gauge. When they told me it was a depth gauge, I started wondering, why did they call it a depth gauge? Well, I know now why. Because it determines how much material that cutter behind it is going to be able to grab. Makes so much sense. But there are all these terms out there. Folks, we've got to figure out how to straighten that mess out, don't we? Well, listen, in this video, I'm going to do some close-up stuff of this chain right here. I'm going to give you my best whack at how to use a Husqvarna depth gauge tool to adjust the raker height or the depth gauge height with respect to the cutter. I'm going to show a little bit of footage of that. But listen, I'm really inviting your comments. I would really like this video to bring in the experts, if you know what I'm saying. Bring them in. Come on, let's have an open forum on depth gauges, rakers. Let's do that. All right, folks, that's enough talk because this video's got to stay short. You know what I'm saying? So here we go, right to the next clip. All right, so what I want to show in this video clip right here, you can see here the profile of this cutter, and you can see the profile of this depth gauge. This depth gauge is what determines how much wood or how much material the leading edge of this cutter is allowed to bite into. So you can envision right now that if this depth gauge were lower, there would be a bigger chunk of wood entering the leading edge of the cutter, and it would really grab. I mean, the saw would grab and most likely stall. It's also a very dangerous situation because it'll pull you into the tree, or it'll push you away from the tree depending on which side of the bar you're using. And that means you could lose control of your saw. And in a previous video that I did, which was more comical than anything else, it really wasn't meant to be too serious, but some people took it very seriously. I was actually not able to control my saw very well. It was so aggressive, it would actually cut through my hinge and cause my tree to fall in whatever direction it wanted to fall, and it wasn't a good situation. So I've learned a lot since then, and I've had a lot of people make comments and give me corrections, and so let me show you something here. So now I've got the Husqvarna progressive raker gauge, and I call it rakers, but it's easier to say than depth gauge, but this is the depth gauge tool. And this is the hole or the window for the depth gauge. And somewhere back in here is where we want the working corner to sit on the bottom side. This notch here is to allow me to clear the cutter in front of it over here. So if I put this in place like this, we take a look at the underside, you can see that the working corner is actually touching the depth gauge tool. And now as I turn this in this direction, you can see the window. Sorry about the camera movement there. You can see the window for the depth gauge of the chain poking right through here. Okay, so as I try to level this or make it so that you can see only the tip of the depth gauge popping through there, you can see that it's actually adjusted pretty well. I've got the working corner of the cutter sitting right about in here, and the depth gauge is right there. So this gives a proper relationship between the depth gauge and the cutter, no matter how far back the cutter ends up being sharpened. Because over time, this cutter will work its way back, so it won't be that tall. So I'm a novice at this, so I'm going to open this up for discussion. I'm hoping you guys will give me some more detail here, because the reason for the progressive gauge, as I understand it, is to maintain a relationship between the working corner, or the leading edge of the cutter, and the top of the raker, and that it's not always 25 thousandths. It starts off 25 thousandths, but then changes? Or is it to maintain the 25 thousandths more accurately? Someone correct me in the comments, make that clear for our viewers. Well, folks, that's it. That's the end of another video, and I think we'll call it a night. I look forward to your comments, folks. If you like the video, hit the like button. And if you'd like to subscribe, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you'll get reminders every time a video is put up. I look forward to 37 more days after this of video footage until the big reveal. All right, folks, be kind to one another, love one another. Peace.
I
gotta get this right. Okay. Is this thing on? Okay. Watching. Y'all be fun. Y'all be fun. Y'all have fun with your life today. Never mind. What did I just say? Why am I saying the things I'm saying? I don't understand what comes out of my mouth sometimes. It makes me freak out. Here we go again. Me. Ma. Okay.
I'm always screwing up. I can't quite help it.